Well, hi, welcome to fall. It is not fall yet when I'm filming this, but as most knitters, at least most knitters that I follow, I can't stop thinking about it and planning for it. So I wanted to make a video about my fall knitting plans. So I will start out by saying I have 6 patterns here and I have all the yarns here and I want to talk about what I'm planning to make, but I do also want to acknowledge that I have a giant pile of whips sitting next to me. And a big part of my fall knitting plans is to force myself to wrap up a bunch of my already on the needles projects before I cast on something new. I've been working all year long on working through stash yarn, and I've been doing really unusually well at it, to be honest, and finishing up projects. And I have, if I look at my Ravelry, like 14 or 15 projects going right now. A couple of those are long-term blanket projects that I'm not going to finish. I have about a dozen whips that I could work on and probably should work on before fall comes. So to proceed, all of these gorgeous patterns and yarns that I'm going to talk about in a minute and my plans for what's coming during cozy crunchy leaf season, I want to say that I intend to finish at least 6 of my whips before I cast on anything new for fall. I do have a trip to Florida in a couple of weeks, so I've basically got 2 weeks to finish up 6 whips before I cast on the first one that I'm definitely going to cast on to take to Florida. I don't think it's a stretch to say that I could finish 4 of these. Several of them are either close to being done or have a deadline anyway, because one of them is a test knit. To lay out my intentions, I plan to finish at least 6 of these projects before I dive into fall knitting, because I think the fall knitting will be more enjoyable for me knowing that I'm not shoving aside a bunch of old projects just for the sake of casting on because it's fall now. I do keep a Ravelry queue that I kind of stick to. I'm pretty good about tinkering with it as I have ideas and keeping track of my ideas on there, but the order is absolutely not usually the order I intend to keep or make things in. I keep it sort of in chunks. So there's like at the top right now a chunk of fall sweaters that I intend to cast on. And then there's some heavier sweaters that I hope to do later in the winter. Sometimes there's a chunk of gift knits that I had ideas for the holidays. And then usually the farthest away season is at the bottom. So right now I've got a bunch of like summer top ideas in a chunk at the bottom. So maybe I don't intend to cast these 6 sweaters on in the exact order I'm going to list here, but the first one on my list is definitely the one I intend to cast on first, because this is what I have chosen specifically as a travel whip to take with me when I go to Florida in a couple weeks. I was looking at the 5 fall sweaters that I know I'm going to want to make, and I didn't think any of them met the criteria for a good travel whip. If you're interested in my thoughts and ideas about how to take a whip with you when you travel and bring your knitting on the road, check out the video linked up here. But I do a lot of travel knitting, and I've shared my thoughts in the past. So anyway, a lot of the knits that I want to make this fall are like textured knits or a little more complex. One of them is color work, and I just didn't think any of them would be particularly fun to work on the road, particularly in Florida, since they're all very fun, warm, woolly knits for fall. So this is my sort of transitional knit. And I do want to point out that a couple of these are by the same designer. There are 2 designers in particular that have caught my attention so much this year. And I've favorited so many patterns from both Wool and Pine Designs and Irene Lin. 2 of the patterns on my fall knits are Irene Lin. I just can't get enough. They're so pretty. They're so like classic looking. I chose this one, my first one, because it's really cool, but I read through about the construction and I think it does secretly make a good travel whip. The Flora Sweater by Irene Lin is this really pretty raglan style pullover that has this gorgeous, delicate lace at the neck, the hem, and both sleeve cuffs. And what's interesting about it is that in the Ravelry description, it says that the lace is actually knit separately and attached later. That means that the body of this sweater is just a very straightforward raglan with some cute details around the raglan lines. And I was like, that's a travel whip. And I specifically was looking through my favorited patterns for something that I could use a DK or worsted weight yarn with, because I have a whole sweater quantity of this. This is KNC, or knit and crochet. This base is called Element. This has been in my stash for a long time. If you have been watching my videos for a minute and you were here a couple of years ago, I did a travel vlog and I made a hoodie out of this in a different colorway. So I actually really like this yarn, but it's been sitting in stash forever because I'm not sure what to do with it. And I find it difficult to know what to do with sometimes when it's like textured like this, because you really wouldn't want to use this on a textured stitch pattern or anything like that, because it would totally get lost on this color. So I thought, since the entire body of this is just that basic raglan, I'll make that part, the basic raglan part, on my trip, and then decide later if I want to use this for the pretty lace around the edges or a different color for that, because the lace around the edges on all of the samples that I looked at on Ravelry was a contrast color. So I think it might be really pretty to find a similarly composed yarn and do like an off-white lace around all the edges, but I might just want to use this. So I don't know yet. Anyway, my plans for my first fall cast on are this transitional piece that is not particularly fall colored or fall vibes, but it's going to be a great project to take with me on my trip as I start thinking about other fall stuff. And then when I come back, I can really dive into the good stuff. The #1 pattern that I am so excited to cast on for fall, that I actually bought a sweater quantity of yarn for, is also by Irene Lynn. It is the Cavo Jumper. I do not know how to pronounce that. I think this is so pretty. I've discussed in my podcast how I'm a little hesitant about all over cables, but I'm gonna try because I think it's just so gorgeous and I want this finished object. So even though I've been very careful about and very steadfast about working from stash this year and trying to pare down my stash a little before I go to Rhinebeck and fill it all up again, I did buy a sweater quantity specifically for this sweater because I don't have anything in stash that will work for it, and I really want to make it. I bought a whole sweater quantity of Wool of the Andes in the color Mink Heather. It's this gorgeous, like kind of darker, warm, neutral beige color that I love. And even though I probably could have found something in stash, I did buy a contrast color because I wanted to pick the perfect contrast color, in my opinion. I do have small quantities of Wool of the Andes laying around. I have other yarns that I could easily use as the contrast for just that Latvian braid detail around the edges of this jumper, but I was already ordering them and I thought this one would be absolutely perfect, and it's really not that different in cost to add one little 50-gram ball of a contrast color when you're already ordering a sweater quantity. Cozy, woolly cables is absolutely where my hyper focus is now, but I have a couple other patterns picked out that have really caught my eye. One of my other most anticipated patterns of this fall is the Fungus Cardigan by Refined Knitwear. I don't think I've ever made a Refined Knitwear pattern before, but I've followed them for a long time and I do really love the look of a lot of their patterns. I think this one in particular is just so striking. I love the length of the sleeves and this like oversized shell. I am voluntarily signing up for a bit of yarn chicken with this one, but we'll see what happens. I'm just going to have to be careful about my yarn management, but I think that I'm trying to use stash yarn. I think that if this works, it will be a really great combination and just be so lovely, and I'm willing to take the chance. I'm planning to use this cone of mohair that I got at a thrift store. As you can see, it was $40. I've explained in detail my thoughts about the price tag on this. They had a lot of yarns there on cones, and whoever priced them had no idea what they were doing, because this was the only cone there that I thought was even remotely worth $40. The others were smaller novelty cones. I decided to purchase this one because I just really liked the color. Like, does it get more fall than this? This beautiful, rich taupe warm color with all of these highlights of like deeper maroons and oranges. Are you kidding me? I don't know if you could hear that because the cat started chewing on my microphone. Listen, you might be fall vibes, but you're going to get kicked out if you keep interfering with the production, young lady. I did some detective work after I bought this. There are some handwritten labels on the inside of the cone, and because of that, I was able to deduce that I think this is uh, Barrington Mohair from Valley Yarns, which is a discontinued base. And according to both the handwriting inside the cone and the information on Ravelry, this is probably around 1,000 yards, which is admittedly less than I would need to make the size I need of the cardigan. But I do know that designers tend to include a little buffer there, and the pattern is also written, I believe, for 2 yarns held together. Yes, it calls for sport weight from Isager and knitting for olive soft silk mohair. And I don't plan to hold 2 together. I just plan to hold this. Obviously, I'll do a gauge swatch and see how it works out. But I think that this could make like such a pretty fungus cardigan. And like I said, I'm willing to take the chance because like to have this gorgeous color with that gorgeous texture will be worth it if it works. So in the past, I was traveling and I bought 3 skeins of this pretty wool. It's a single ply fingering weight, but it's a light fingering. It's 475 yards to a 4-ounce skein. This is from Neighborhood Fiber Coat. The colorway is called Federal Hill. And I have 3 skeins of this very squishy, very pretty, again, warm gray with quite a bit of a little halo on it. I love this. Last Christmas, a loved one gifted me an ebook copy of, I believe the title is Urban Knits by Leanie Hoy. And when I was flipping through that, at that time I already had this yarn in stash, and I found the pattern for Uhuru Lite. I found it so striking. I really want to make it, and I actually have enough yardage based on what I can glean to make it out of this pretty fingering weight yarn. So again, that's one that I probably have to do a gauge swatch just to make sure it's right, but I think it'll work, and I think it's such a pretty lightweight, simple garment with a lot of really gorgeous details. So that's one that I've been looking forward to. That's one that I considered doing for my travel whip, but I just kind of thought this like nice woolly fluffy yarn is probably not the thing to try to work on the beach in Miami. So I do plan on making the Uhuru Lite pullover at some point this fall or winter. This next one is a pattern and yarn combo that I've talked about before and I'm still excited about, but I never found the chance to cast on. I bought this pack from Jagger Spun Yarns at Rhinebeck 2 years ago. I think they're so pretty. I love this contrast, these like pretty blue and gray yarns with the golden ones. I think it's so nice. These are sport weight, and I had struggled for a long time to find a project that would use 6 sport weight colors in the quantities that I had them. Last year, when I saw on Instagram that Natasha Hornsby had posted her release of the Artus Shawl, I was like, oh wait, this could be something. And I opened up the details on Ravelry, and it calls for a sport weight, so I wouldn't even have to make any modifications as far as gauge. I believe it had a different number of colors. I don't remember if it called for more or fewer colors, but I can make it work. 6 is enough to stagger it throughout a shawl like that to make it work. I just think it's a gorgeous geometric shawl that I would love to have. I think it would perfectly showcase this set of yarns, and it will just be, again, like such cozy, beautiful fall vibes to use these perfect, rich colors on this nice woolly yarn. There's just so much potential for this shawl. It's just one of those things that I think is going to take a little more of my attention than I'm normally devoting to my whips, and that has made me hesitant to cast on. That's a theme this fall, by the way, like color work or texture, things that I don't normally lean into since I tend to be a mindless knitter. I guess, aiming for more mindful knitting this fall purely because I want those finished objects. And the last one is also one that I've mentioned before. This is a kit I purchased last year on a vacation. So the Lunenburg Pullover by Amy Christophers was a kit offered at this adorable little yarn store that I was at in Canada last year on a trip with my mom. You can see on here. So it's a I believe this is also sport weight, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, these are sport weight. So the main color is this deep gray heather. And then there's these cool, like beautiful contrast colors. This came in like a nice box, like packaged up all beautifully, but for the sake of space, I took them all out and tied them together to put in my regular yarn storage, and that's why it's flopping all over like this. But this kit did not come with the pattern. I do need to purchase the pattern, but I do want to make this particular pullover with it because I know it's the right amount and I think it's such a good choice. And as I understand it, Amy Christophers is Canadian and I don't know, she's local to where I bought this, which was St. John, New Brunswick, but she's certainly regional, and that's why they chose this, and it's a local yarn, and I just think this is a very woolly yarn. This is absolutely like rustic, but as all wool, I think it will get better with time. And I do think that it's just too perfect. It turned out. These labels keep falling off too. I'm not going to know which colors are which by the time I get there. I can see that the main color is called coal, and rightfully so. And my contrast colors are shrub, which is the green. Oh my gosh. This pretty gray is called birch. Oh, this beautiful mustard yellow is pollen. Oh wait, there's one smushed in here. The blue is called sky. So they're all very aptly named colors. So this is one, again, needs a little more attention. I don't know how soon I'll cast it on, but it's definitely something that I hope to make for myself this fall or winter. Because I bought it because it's a beautiful pattern. These are beautiful colors, and it's a lovely souvenir of my time in Canada to buy local yarn in the form of a kit from a local designer, and looking forward to it. Those are my 6 fall whips that I am so excited to dig into. But for now, we are going to have to say goodbye, and I'm going to put on some more seasonally appropriate clothes and go get to business working through my summer whips, because I would so much rather be working on one of these Irene Lynn sweaters. Oh my gosh. Like, it seems like a good idea to sit down and talk about all of the gorgeous fall knits that I'm willing to get into, but now I've just got like fall swirling around in my head, pumpkins swirling around in my head, if you will, and all I can think about is all these gorgeous yarns that I just touched and all of these gorgeous patterns that I just talked about, and now I have to go knit some fingering weight cotton tank tops until they're done. But anyway, stay tuned to the podcast, subscribe if you haven't already, so that you can check in and make sure that I actually do stick to my word and try to finish up 6 of my dozen or so whips before I cast on for fall. Happy making and happy autumn, everyone. I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye.